We celebrate our successes in this chamber as a community, and tonight we pray for healing in this chamber as a community. We pray for Afton Taylor, a 7-year-old son of our fire and EMS department family, Doug and Chrissy Taylor, a young boy who you brought to your heavens yesterday. We pray for your help towards this family, Afton's dad and mom, Doug and Christy, Afton's sister, Maya, and Afton's brother, Boyd. Help them and bless their family and their friends to cope with this loss of a loved son. Lord, help and bless Afton as he enters into your heaven. I found this prayer that the Lord sent to me to recite. I thought it was appropriate. Father, we ask you to send your peace to those persons who are mourning. Continue to surround them with family, friends, loved ones who offer words of comfort. Give them sweet and restful sleep. Father, remove the spirit of heaviness and give them garments of praise. In due time, bless their lives to overflow with laughter and joy again. As they take refuge in you, please help them to put their trust in you. Holy Spirit, we ask that you settle the hearts and the minds of those who are feeling any guilt, resentment, bitterness, or anger. Help them not to look back, but to press forward. We pray this in God's name. Amen. Amen.
Okay. First up, Community Economic Development, Vice Chairman Surratt.
I'm going to turn this over. This was the codified ordinance, the fees, and try to properly cover right away. Where are we bringing this from? Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you, Member Surratt. So this is a result of some efforts by yourself and some other members of council in conversations with the building community, to review our processes and to ascertain whether they're in line with other communities. And we seem to have a reputation in some aspects that it's not. And so after some lengthy discussions and meetings with a number of these individuals, we thought that we would break this down into the components by trade, and I pledged that we needed to get something to you before the break on one of those trades. We think it's probably the most pressing trade that has to do with cement work. And so what you have before you are a series of a couple resolutions that make some changes to the way we are going to proceed with whether or not a permit is required, whether an inspection, a building inspection is required as it relates to cement work. So the change that we are making is that if the cement work, whether that's a patio, steps, a sidewalk that goes up to the front steps, a driveway, if the cement work is on private property, that will no longer require a permit. It will no longer require a building inspection. This is consistent with all the other communities in Stark County. We're the only one that was inspecting cement work on private property. So this brings us in line with that. As it relates to then the cement that's not on private property but in the public right of way. So this could include the sidewalk. This would include the driveway apron would be in the public right of way. We're proposing that still requires the building department to be involved for the permitting and inspection of that from a building standpoint. And the reason is that we want to make sure that the sidewalk and the apron, where we have liability as the municipality, potential liability as a municipality, that the work is being done to our standard. So that sidewalk heaves as a result of poor construction could be a potential issue to us. So we want to make sure that is continuing to be inspected. However, we find that there are a lot of jobs in the public right of way that aren't very big jobs. They're a square or two that need replaced, or just only part of a piece of the apron that needs replaced. And what we found is that the fee for those small jobs at $75 is out of line with the other communities. So if the job is 40 square feet or less, then the fee would be $40. If it's above 40 square feet, then the fee would still be $75. So now you see the difference on the cement on private property, cement in the public right of way, and then we break it down in the public right of way into big job, small job. And then what we're left with is just a couple other miscellaneous situations where we have zoning inspection. So this is not a building department like you're building it the right way, it's to the right depth. It's not that issue. The zoning would be instances of, let's say, you're putting in a new driveway, and how far is that driveway from the setback? It would be advisable for you to, get someone from the department to sign off that that is 5 feet from the property line. People still do put it in without coming in, and if they put it in and it is within that 5 feet and someone files a complaint, it could be in a situation where they're being forced to remove it. So there's no fee involved to come out and take a look at that, or just submit a plan that indicates where things are going to be. We'll approve those right here. But there wouldn't be an inspection fee for the zoning on that. Driveway that is replacing an existing driveway, no need to see anything, even from a zoning standpoint. It's already in there. It's already existing. This would just be for new work. Maybe you're putting a driveway around the side of your garage towards the back. You're going to get close to the property line. We already have zoning requirements that deal with you can't put a driveway in your front yard, or you can't convert your whole front yard into a concrete apron that you can just pull cars in. So those things are dealt with in other parts of the code. But I think that's kind of a
the meeting that I talked about last week, Don and Daryl and myself, the contractors that came in, very reputable contractors that are in town here. It was not meant to appease the contractors. It was really to help our community want to do improvements. They were getting to a point with so many inspections and so many fees that it was counterproductive to what we want to see improving. And they saw it too, and they brought it to our attention. And so this whole idea came about through a lot of these contractors. In this case, the cement work by very reputable, smart cement people who kind of know what people want done and what they'll pay for. And it puts us right in line with other communities. We were a little bit over, which, someone once put a pad of concrete in and the fee was almost as much as the concrete. So we got to kind of put it in line here, and I think we've done a great job with that, listening, and then Pat brought Marty in, and together, I think everybody was, when they left, everyone was happy with this. And I think it'll help us in the long run get some things done and have people want to improve their driveways and cement work. As he said, it does not include the right-of-way. There's still inspections on sidewalks and aprons, and they have to keep away from the regular rules about the setbacks and everything. But it's just about replacing things what they have and wanting to do new things. There's not a whole bunch of inspections like there were in the past, which puts us right in line. Any questions on that for Daryl? You were at the meetings. Any other things?
I think it's just important that everyone understand that we're essentially relegating to the consumer the responsibility to ensure that the driveway is poured in has a certain standard to it. Because we're not going to inspect. So if it's 4 inches and it's to be 4 inches with steel, then the buyer, it's his or her responsibility to make sure that that product conforms to the specs.
And most of the contractors, especially cement, know that. And if we go out there and they're not, we're going to make them pull it out. So they're real prepared with that.
Right. Right way to go.
So the contractor still has to be registered, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, unless they do it on the weekend, by the flag night or something, basically, we're gonna know who they are. And we know the reputation, like some of the people we've met with that do a lot of concrete work. And on top of that, you know, getting people out to re-inspect, we have limited rain days or sunny days. It's really tough nut to crack, it really is. So I think we're on the right track to get things done more efficiently, to make it more user-friendly, and the consumer, which is the constituents, will get a fine job at the end.
And for the chair and the members, these three items, 1A, B, and C, because they're not enacting any new law, any new policy or procedures, they are clearly ceremonial resolutions. And if you wish, a single reading is all that's necessary to send these to the planning commission. We're not asking for them to rule in any certain way. We're just asking them for their direction and consideration. And so, according to our charter, items that are ceremonial, which this clearly appears to be, if you want to do just a single reading to get it to the planning commission, that would be legislatively correct. You can also read it 2 or 3 times. But if you wish, a single one.
So let's get the show on the road. You want to.
It's going to come back to us anyway.
Yes, sir.
Keep in mind too that this is just for the cement work. We're still working on the builders, the contractors. That's next, and it takes a lot of time and effort. So one at a time, we'll be real thorough with it.
Just to follow, I think it's a great compromise to help people get things done around their house, but I think it's still essential that the public knows you just can't pour siding or concrete anywhere you want on your property. Ran into a few situations just in the past year where some residents were over on their neighbor's property, where they gave them permission orally to do that. That's not the way we want things to happen. We want to make sure if it's a new driveway, the new area they want to build upon or excavate, they still got to go through some type of inspection process. If it's existing, I agree. You know, if it's already there and it conforms to our codes, and that's fine. They can replace it with whoever they want. I guess that's what we're saying, without a permit, right? The responsibility on the general contractor they want and the workmanship they get is totally relying on them picking that person. The right-of-way is a totally different story. So just want to be careful of that. That was explained by Pat. Everybody understands that. You just can't pull a truck up, excavate your front yard, except for concrete.
Without repercussion.
Without repercussions, I think that's key. People have to know if it's not criteria to get torn out. Nice work on this. Thank you.
Shows that we agree with this.
Yeah.
We should note that we have the various members of the administration present, and that there are a majority supports moving this along with one reading.
I would say we're unanimous on that. Anyone opposed to it?
No.
You know on the record that I.
Oh, yes, let the record reflect. Chairwoman Keesling has joined us. My apologies. All right, so that'll be for A, B, and C, correct? That's correct. Okay, thank you. Next up, street and alley.
Okay, so we have A and B. I'd like to jump down to B, discussion of potential legislation regarding Chapter 902, which is the sidewalk policy. So if you look in your packet and go to 902, which is installations of sidewalk. I'll give you a chance to get to it. It's like halfway through the packet. So the criteria, I'll just explain why you're looking for it. The criteria for sidewalks, you have to meet 2 of the 3 criterions, and there's 3 of them listed there under 902.01, installation of sidewalks. So I'm proposing that we remove those 3 criterions because I don't believe they're necessary right now if we move forward with doing some of these street projects we're going to be talking about in the near future. So if there's any discussion that you guys want to talk about why we want to remove those, we need 2 of the 3 criterions in order for the city to do the sidewalk.
Don, let's touch on why.
Let's talk about the whole reason.
Let's touch on why, what.
Go ahead, you want that?
Yeah.
Who wants to lead this?
Pat.
Pat?
Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, so on 90201, you want to talk about that first? That's
I think we should.
okay. So that's installation of sidewalks, and what we have presently, and this was a 2000. This is all an ordinance that was passed in 2009. So it's 10 years old. Presently, if the city chooses to install a sidewalk on a city street, spending its own money, it must meet 2 of the following 3 criteria. A school or school facility or government recreation or government facility must be located on the street. Or the street has a vehicular traffic count that in essence creates a public safety issue with people walking on the street because of the volume of traffic. 3, the street is in a no transport zone of the school. So if you meet one of the 3, and to me, one of the most important ones of it is number 2, safety is people on the street that should be on the sidewalk. But if you can only meet one of the 3, the city cannot proceed regardless of how warranted the sidewalk may be. So this comes up with another piece of legislation that's going to be on your committee here this evening. So you mentioned one way that you could deal with it, which would be to repeal the section. Another more, I think, minimally invasive procedure would be to change one word in 90201 subsection P. If the street meets any 2 of the above 3 criteria, if you change the word 2 to 1, if the street meets any 1 of the above 3 criteria, then the city can proceed. But there'd still be criteria.
Thanks for breaking it down, making it easy to understand. So I apologize for not explaining it clearly.
Sure. So, Pat, you mind? Talking about the vehicular traffic count, maybe explain what that is to anyone. So, is that even needed is what I'm trying to get to it. That's what.
No, technically, it's not. We can get a written safety recommendation from either the chief of police or chief of fire, which, in talking with them, that I don't think that would be a problem, that they view that as issues on that street. But if not, we could also do a SCATS, and as long as it has a traffic count similar to other situated streets, we'd be okay. So what this was trying to avoid, I think back in 2009, is just doing a sidewalk on a cul-de-sac that doesn't get any volume of traffic.
Are you guys okay with, is
Well,
everybody okay?
I think we need to discuss this a little bit.
Yeah.
This has been probably one of the most discussed policies in my tenure here. Now you remember this, everybody. And there's reasons for it. It's not that we don't want to put sidewalks in. It's just we have so many over sidewalks, and some of the sidewalks were put in by contractors years ago, or subdivision requirements that we're dealing with those that are falling apart. And I'm happy with where we're going, 902.02, because we've added some money and can change the thing. Tonight, I'm a little disappointed we're just dealing with this tonight. I know the sense of urgency, because we might have grant dollars involved with this. I think maybe that's a criteria we put in, just, and President Peters suggested, and I agree, to maybe make that part of the criteria to give you 2 out of the 2 you need. I'm not saying I'm against this totally, because times change. Obviously, this city needed a lot of infrastructure, and Darrell, I remember not voting for a sidewalk you wanted on Glenwood years ago because Ward 1 was flooding over, and that got defeated because I thought there was other needs, especially in Ward 1 and other wards, for street infrastructure. And that's how these discussions came to be and evolved. I just want to make sure we're careful with this, in the sense that we're asking, I think, 902.02 for existing sidewalk residents that have existing sidewalk to pay half. Here we're going to put sidewalk in an area that needs sidewalk. I'm all about being transient as far as walking North Canton, but no residents paying anything there. So I think we need to look at how we're addressing this in the future.
Right.
Grant dollars are a big part of this. I think that's the caveat you hang this on, because we're not paying for it. We're getting an agency or state government, federal funds to pay for this. And that's a way that we can look at this, I think, that makes sense.
It's still majority rules on how we're gonna do this anyhow. I think as we move forward, we need to deal with.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm just saying, whoever's in council has.
Both sides, yeah, I understand.
We're
I'm trying to
moving-
make sense.
We're moving in the 21st century, so we need to get with the program. I mean, whatever happened in the past, we need to move forward with getting some of these sidewalks taken care of. Walk around town, you'll see what I mean. It's a risk and a safety issue. So
I mean, I understand that, but you don't understand how we got to this point. I just want us to think about this. That's all I'm saying.
And I think one of the biggest issues were forcing people to have sidewalks who didn't want them because they're gonna lose big trees. So my yard, you put a sidewalk through, at this point, I'm not gonna lose anything, but 10 years ago, I would have lost a big tree. And the majority of our issues in lining some of these streets with sidewalks were, these people were like, well, no, you're not gonna take out my 40-year-old tree that shades my entire yard. So I don't think it's as cut and dry as you think it is, Dominic. It's majority, Dominic. You have to ask the homeowners, and that's where we sort of came up with the whole 50% of the street had to agree, because at that point you're asking them to pay 50%. But I still think you can't, just because we want one on East Hill or we want one on Glenwood, we want it, but what about the people who own the property?
I think we'll be able to get it addressed. I really do. I think it's time to make some changes.
You want something in place, just as you said, some individuals because of the trees, and there are some individuals that simply don't wish to have sidewalks because sidewalks invite foot traffic often on their lawns and their level strips, and some of them enjoy not having that foot traffic. And we should at least contemplate that some of these will be challenged and
How are we going to deal with
how we're going to respond to that.
Another aspect, and we ran into this on 7th Street Hill, there are homes that, when the street was put in, it brought the street up so close to the house that it's in violation of our
setbacks?
zone, our setback requirements. So,
Yeah, those homes on East Hill, I would think that is going to be a big issue on setbacks and trees.
Well, what do you guys want to do? Just do nothing, sit back?
I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, this is,
We want to acknowledge concerns.
this is going, in the public right of way. So I mean, it's in the right of way. Now, we can,
You understand that, I understand that. The
Well,
common
we need
person
to
doesn't.
well, I think that, as this, if this project moves forward, that would be something that we would entertain. And we're also doing, looking at one we've been working on for a while up on 7th Street, and we're actually talking to people, reaching out to people, having a dialogue.
Right.
It's not like you just wake up and then there's a backhoe in your yard digging it up. So I mean, there's some part to that. But I want to go back to at some point it really comes down to there's a lot of nuances here, but public safety is the issue. And do you want to deal with this when there's been an incident, or do you want to deal with this as being a proactive way that there are certain streets that warrant a connectivity for public safety? There's reasons to have this for other reasons why you may want a sidewalk on East Hill to connect to Main, but the grant approach, is certainly something that would be could be added, but at the same time, we're going to be dealing with other projects where if if the ultimate greater good is objected to by a single individual, then you'll be facing these questions on a lot of issues that I see that come into my office every day.
But what do you do when for 3 years we have sustainable money and we get a ton of grants and we're saying it's a safety issue and we're putting sidewalks in because of safety issues, but, you know, we run out of money and there's still 10 streets that are a safety issue. How are we gonna rank those? Because in 4 years, we may not have enough money to put sidewalks on certain, so I think you gotta be very careful when you talk about safety as well.
I think
It's safety on every road.
Yep, we want safety on every road, I agree, and I do think that you have a criteria. We do the kind of same thing with road repair. We triage which are the ones are the best ones that need to be done and which ones that can wait. And I don't think anybody's proposing a policy that we're going to go out and start just putting in sidewalks where there aren't any. But I look at what has been the situation in the past. When we get into 90202, there's no activity. There hasn't been
That's
in your tenure on council. It doesn't work. 90201 doesn't work. We've never used it. So if we haven't done it in 10 years and you want it done, I think you have to change something.
Things are changing, so we have to get with the program. So we're going to cherry pick the roads that need it worst or the best. What?
Man,
Go ahead.
when you're finished.
No. I was just saying that, you know, we have replacement issues and also where we have, like, we know Lindy Lane's an issue, we know Glenwood's an issue, and we know maybe some of these connecting arteries are issues that we need to address. I'm not saying everybody needs a sidewalk. Let's do it how we're going to connect the downtown Main Street, you know, get everything adjusted safely. And you guys drive around and see people walking in the streets all the time. It's a miracle no one's been killed yet, to my knowledge. So this is something that needs to happen as we move forward with this downtown redevelopment and all the things that we want to do. And why the economy is better is when you want to take advantage of these things. Are we going to be able to do all of them? No. Let's just do the most prioritized ones, however we decide that. So the engineer can talk about it, kind of like, you know, categorizing the streets in order that they need it, based on safety or whatever the criteria is. But I think it's something we need to move on. And go ahead, Darrell.
I think our goal historically has been to install sidewalks. Let me just take a step back. Our street mileage is not growing. It's relatively static. If we pick up a little street mileage, it's typically in a neighborhood that is being constructed. It's a neighborhood that under the subdivision regulations requires a sidewalk, right? So really what we're talking about is what does the current sort of status quo require? And our goal was, at one time, was to install sidewalks on the connectors. Well, what were those connectors? Those were Apple Grove Road, they were Everhard, etc. And those connectors, I think we defined them as streets with traffic in excess of 25,000 cars a day. I think that's, my memory serves me right. Most of that stuff's already done, right? We have a couple streets that don't have sidewalks, East Hill being one, it's got partial, isn't completed. But by and large, I think we're probably pretty well home. I would argue that we do have so I'm not sure that we're going to have lots of hue and cry over the installation of sidewalks. Second thing is this, just because you have a policy doesn't, or no policy, doesn't mean that you've lost control. Because you're going to have to appropriate the money, number one, in an annual appropriation ordinance. Number two is you're going to have to advertisers, authorize administration advertisers. So you have a robust debate. So if it comes down to Lindy Lane or it comes down to Glenwood, Doug and I, you'll have the pleasure of watching us spar again. But the reality is, you know, what we really want to do tonight is we need to fix this if you want a sidewalk on East Hill.
I say we move
And you
forward.
can always come back and redo it again, but right now, you can't put a sidewalk on East Hill given the language you have in your ordinance.
So does that make sense to everybody up here?
Yeah,
So-
and as the,
Pick the solution.
Move on.
and that's the fourth person who drives up and down that street all the time and sees all the people and sees those dead stops,
Do
you
you
know,
need it?
where it's not, I do. It would be
Okay,
great. And
so
the fact that
we
it's
solved that one.
75% paid for is huge.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's arguing
No,
about wanting sidewalks, just how we get there.
Did you hear what he said? It's a robust conversation. You're gonna speak your mind like you always do, and you can put your clamor down like you always do, except for if it's roads in your department, right? Because we get you a lot of sidewalks for Doug Lane, Doug's Lane.
I don't even know where to go with that. You know,
vote.
I think
the point made is,
Yeah.
I'm for it if we get grant dollars to help support it. I think it pushes it forward here.
Yeah.
I'm not for it, we're gonna just create it when we got deteriorating sidewalks somewhere else, when we got neighbors that say, well, you just put a new sidewalk, and people didn't pay anything. 5 years ago, I paid to have my sidewalk, and where's my sidewalk, councilman, councilwoman? That's what I gotta look at. I think we have to be realistic about it, that's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm just saying, we
But
need
in
to
today's world,
bar
we're
for.
not gonna get a sidewalk that way. When's the last time we got a new sidewalk that way?
When we did curb and gutter anywhere that
What
was
year?
existing.
What
That was a
year?
long time ago. That's
No, not really.
What year?
We slowed that down.
Based on it when they did all my curb.
Anybody who had sidewalk before got it.
How long ago was that?
That's all.
10
That's
years.
one at a time.
At least 10 years.
One at a time, guys.
Yes.
Here's the reality. Here's the reality of this, and this goes to the second thing here, is that we had, back in the early 70s and the late 70s and early 80s, we had as a municipal policy, the installation of curbs and gutters and sidewalks was done by assessment. And we built exactly no curbs, gutters, and sidewalks. We did none. So you can imagine where this community would be today if we did not have curbs and gutters. If it's in the right of way, I think we own it, we ought to take care of it, and we ought to have the authority to install it with a view to unique circumstances. You know, you can always build a sidewalk around a tree if somebody will give you an easement. There are things you can do. But I just think we ought to get this done. We've got a big grant out here. I don't care what the language is, but I think we ought to take advantage of it to get East still finished off.
Amen.
Good.
Well, I think we're all heading in the right direction. It's just how are we going to do it? Are we going to strip all three? Are we going to add 4 that if there's grant money involved, we move forward? Or what are we going to do?
I'd strip all 3. That's my personal opinion.
I agree.
I disagree. I'd say we put the grant in and revisit this.
I don't
Per
care.
sidewalk. Per
It
sidewalk.
moves forward either way.
Yeah.
Just get it done. I don't
I
care.
say we either take them all or leave number 2, which means
Yeah,
there's a
it
need.
doesn't matter.
But I would say take them all too. Or I'd leave number 2, it says that there's a traffic need or
That's
safety.
fine.
So either one of those, to me, would be acceptable to get this thing moving and for the future.
Okay, I think the solution, let me do this then. Mr. Fonte, if I might.
Please.
Let me propose that we amend section 902.01, striking the word in A, any 2 to read any 1.
Perfect.
And then we can revisit it later on.
And then as well as in B.
Yes.
Could you do those again, member Riddle?
I would move that we amend section 902.01A, striking any 2 means to read any 1 of the following 3 criteria.
B.
And then in B, any 1, striking the word 2. And I would ask that correspondingly, as part of my motion, that we place this amendment on emergency.
Thank you.
Would you also be looking to add number 4, dealing with grants?
Yes.
Or just leave it at the 3?
No, because if you, Darryl, your proposal would be changing the whole policy to, it'd be any time you want to do
Or
it.
grant would pigeonhole it.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary.
You wouldn't need 2.
But isn't that the sense of urgency here? This wasn't talked about at all or revised. Sense of urgency is our engineer's looking at a grant, and at this time now, it makes sense to put the sidewalk in with major grant dollars paying for it. or else we wouldn't be talking about this.
Okay, so
We'd be talking about the residential sidewalks.
Let's say we put that language in there, let's check with Pat and the law director if that's necessary, but we're gonna get the East Hill thing done, and also, if there's no money, or we don't have excess money to be able to address these things one by one, you have to vote anyhow for it, which appropriate.
None of this is gonna get done without a majority of council.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right, you're simply stating nay in each one of those.
Okay.
So you'll have to hear and vote again.
It would take 4 of the 7 councilmen to even do or people to even do a new sidewalk, so what difference does it make?
Do it right, it comes to us twice.
It's gonna come in place.
Right, so I think we should just get past it and move on. Really.
Well, it can take 4 just to vote for the project. If you change the installation of sidewalk code, it doesn't matter.
All right, well, to move this legislation forward, this committee, do I have at least 4 affirmative votes to change the language?
You have my motion.
Well, okay,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused
Yeah,
as
same.
to why we're voting
Well,
on something.
this is for the record committee report. I want to make sure who's in favor of moving this legislation forward, so there's no
And-
question when it comes to
What we're
legislating
moving
forward. Yeah, and what we're moving forward. Okay,
The amended version.
the amended version.
So
We haven't done that before.
We're looking at this.
I mean, we've,
Correct.
Correct.
So it's 6-1 for an emergency and making A and B and 90201, striking 2 and making it 1.
Mr. Mayor, we're trying to, in lieu of a work committee report, we're trying to achieve clarity on the transcript.
I understand that. In the past, you have just gone around the table and people have indicated it didn't
Yeah.
require a motion.
6-1 doesn't enough.
Okay.
Okay, that was,
Let's go. Yep.
so we're good. So
Okay,
now back to you, A.
Okay, AA. Now, this is all about East Hill right now, and what we're talking about is a total renovation to that property. It's 2,800 linear feet, and it goes from Westview Circle east to the city limits, which is Fraser. It's going to include curb, gutter, catch basins. It's going to take it all the way down. I mean, it's a huge project. It's 1.2 million roughly, and I want to just say, Rob, kudos to you, buddy. Because, I mean, seriously, he just got us 820,000, or 802,000,
840,270.
270.
Letter came today.
Right, and then we had 350 in the budget anyhow. So I mean, technically, this is gonna last for many, many years, because we're taking it all the way down. Are they using polymer, or are they using the regular asphalt?
We were looking at regular, but we haven't made that final decision.
I hope you can use polymer, because it'll last like maybe 17, 18 years.
Yeah, we're regular. A little bit shy of the counts I'd like to see from polymer.
So this would be on an emergency, because we want to get this project on. Also would include, there's some money in there for some sidewalks.
Yeah, what we were looking at doing was, at least on the south side, grading it for a future sidewalk. And then, based on the discussion tonight, taking at least an alternate bid to see if we have enough to actually construct it.
So I say that we move this to putting it on the agenda.
Now, Rob, you believe that because we will be there doing curb and gutter and aprons, there's already a lot of cement there, that our cost per unit would be better utilizing the existing
The
mobilization.
economy of scale, and I'd like to grade it to also accommodate a future walk, but it would never be cheaper than if we were to include it.
Does that make sense? Council members?
As much as I'd like to talk about sidewalks, is the road actually going to be wider?
A little bit. Right now, that road is roughly 2 11-foot lanes. We're going to follow our normal typical section, which is 2 13-foot lanes.
Perfect.
And then the curb and gutter is 2.5 feet wide on south.
Perfect.
It'll be wider. Those open ditches will be gone. Good. Help clean up the profile a little bit.
As discussed, the sidewalk will connect to Monticello division.
Right, yeah. What we're looking at is the very westernmost street into Monticello where the sidewalk comes out now. then that will connect, we'd have a sidewalk from there west to the existing sidewalk down by Westview. Which will
So,
be,
Rob-
and we get people from that neighborhood if they chose, go for a walk, go paths, whatever.
Rob, so basically, I could go from all the way down to Fraser, walk all the way to Cleveland Avenue,
Absolutely.
and then head up Cleveland. So you understand, we're trying to do, we want it all connected, so. Because this is where we're going, and you watch in 2 years what happens. Okay, that's all I have. Move to the agenda.
With an emergency.
Yes, with emergency.
Great.
Everyone good on that one?
Mr. President, if I may, for point of order, the chairman of the committee, you seem to indicate that you believe that you're done.
We're
You
done.
have 9:02.
Yeah, we're still, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, wouldn't let that go.
Place.
And we want to replace the language for the sidewalk, what we just pulled
In
out.
replacement, you want me to
Yeah,
run that a little bit?
Yeah.
We talked about this last week also.
the replacement plan, I'm sorry.
You know, there's been, you know, a lot of talk about, you know, that's why, you know, there's a sidewalk that's bad here, a sidewalk that's bad there. And, you know, that's exactly what we're talking about here. Ben, who's our intern from Walsh, has put some time and effort into a program. I've looked at it, and I want you guys to see this, and I want him to explain it, because he did a terrific job on this. He's taken a lot of different things from different places and his own thoughts and put it into a program. And that's about all I'll say, Ben. Why don't you just take over and tell us what the need is and take over?
Thank you, Councilman. The administration was asked to look into our existing sidewalk replacement policy, to cost share replacing existing sidewalks in the right-of-way with homeowners, to kind of reduce the cost, because under current law, that maintenance of that sidewalk is their sole fiscal responsibility. Our current policy, which was passed 10 years ago, as Mr. DiOrio stated earlier, has not been used. Our belief is that it's because it's too burdensome, as it currently requires you and the vast majority of your neighbors to agree that your sidewalk is bad and needs replaced. So we did some work to make a new policy that not only allows individual homeowners to petition the city for cost sharing, but also kind of streamlines how the city can administer such a program. So in our proposed system, an individual homeowner who has at least 2 blocks of sidewalk that meet the already existing standards for needs of repair can petition the city for 50-50 cost sharing. The city will collect applications for such cost sharing agreements potentially from August through November 1st. The city can then decide which of those applicants is the most pressing up to a dollar amount that the council sets, and then aggregate all of those small projects into one big bid that we can then give to a concrete contractor to complete over the summer. So to walk you through a timeline, citizens would apply in the fall, the city would aggregate the information and pick what projects it wants to help fund, and then bid it out in the winter, and then in the following summer and spring, the contractor would complete the work. And then the process would start over again the next fall. How we intended the funding to work is that the city would front the entire cost. So say that we were going to do $100,000 in the first year. The city would front $100,000, and then after a homeowner's individual project is completed, the city sends them a final invoice and they repay the city. And if they fail to do so, the city has the ability to exercise its power to put a lien or additional property taxes on this property.
And it's 50%.
50%. So
50%.
homeowner would pay for 50% of the repairs, and the city would pay for 50% of the repairs. Any trees that need removed would be solely the responsibility of the homeowner. Any utilities that need to be moved, altered, in some way affected would be the sole responsibility of the homeowner.
So Ben, homeowner has to pay their fair share, right?
Yes.
But they're petitioning you or petitioning the city, so they obviously want something done. And if they're selected because we're doing it in, worst, best situation, right? Isn't that the idea, to do it in the worst case, most dangerous situation?
Yeah, I think what Ben was referring to is that once the applications are collected, I would go over to our building department, which would go out and inspect these sidewalks to make sure that they're valid sidewalks that are in fact in need of repair and are in violation of the code. And then from that information, it would be given to the engineer who would be able to determine how much square footage or lineal footage are we talking about with replacing sidewalks. And from that, he'd be able to put together a bid packet. And another part of this that Ben was integral in was researching what other communities are doing, particularly Canton. This is very similar to what Canton does, except we think we've made it better in that we actually are going to bid it out and get a better unit price. Just as we're talking with East Hill, a contractor knows he's going to do so much cement work, he knows where his jobs are, and if he can fit 4 streets, 4 sidewalks in that need squares done that are on the northwest side, and he knows he's got a job over in Jackson Township someplace, swing over and get those things while the cement's still in the truck, ends up getting a better unit cost for us, particularly if we bid it out in January.
That's a smart plan.
So-
Good work, Ben.
So what he's saying is, we, in this case, the example is we would put up $2,000 aside every year for this program. And there'd be a bidding process. If someone wants it done, first come, first served, whoever, two or more pads at that point. And then it would go into the engineering department to see the priority of those.
Building department.
Building department, okay.
Yeah.
And at that point, then we would have somebody bid on it and send those people out for a period of time during that summer. So,
when you say 2 pads, I'm looking at my sidewalk, so there's little breaks, each break's 1 pad.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I know that, I just want to make sure for the
5 by 5, 25 square feet.
25 square feet.
and if there's a tree that's, causing it, that's up to the homeowner. If there's other things that are around there, that's up to the homeowner. But we want better sidewalks than what we have. We want to improve. I mean, I can go around here, we walk and take pictures of things that a stroller couldn't make it over. And we want to improve that. Remember, we want to be the best. We don't necessarily going to be the cheapest, but we do want to be the best. And this is just I think a first step to get us to having a program to take care of this issue. Comments?
And this has been something to talk about for a long time.
Hey, listen, guys, I concur with this. The only thing I see is it hasn't been used. The only thing I see, though, is we do have some problems with existing sidewalk that are really hazardous, or trip hazards. And how do we address that through this? I mean,
Well, can our nuisance person just go there and say, we have a program and
that's
take care of it?
that's what I'm saying, because, this is still looks like voluntary participation. And thanks for your work on this.
Not for the nuisance guy, though. He's
No,
gonna
no,
make
no.
sure it's done, and here's
has
a
the
program,
tool.
you can do it if you want to.
But I think this sets the tone that you don't have to replace everything, you don't have to wait on your neighbors. But we have them out there, and I think we gotta address those, because
Well, to answer your question on how that will be addressed, is that's going to be addressed through the enforcement process. So
to do what enforcement?
through an enforcement process. So we've created this program which someone may avail themselves to, and they may choose not to avail themselves to it. But it's still a violation of our ordinances for the sidewalk to be in such a situation. I know I've done a number of these already this year where we're making compliance
Yeah.
to deal with
I
it.
agree with that.
And that's how you would get compliance.
Here's your vehicle to help solve it, 50%, we're going to do.
I mean, because you could say you need to replace this hazard, someone gets hurt, they're gonna sue you, so you pay the whole amount. This way here, he's got 50%, the compliance officer has a tool now, and it's a positive thing instead of a negative thing. And besides that, I mean, we're gonna see some improvements, and this needs to be done. And we walk around a lot, ride our bicycles a lot, and I see, I mean, it's really, it's, if you walk, you're on a bike or walking, you're gonna see a lot more. Ask the walkers.
No, I agree.
Yeah, it is done, and I think it's a good plan.
In 90204, then also it was written in there that this is limited to owner-occupied residential properties.
Why is that?
Because if you're running a business, that's a cost of your doing business.
So you're saying that there's a, coming down a commercial way, I mean, they
This is
have
for residential properties.
nothing to do with Cleveland Avenue?
It's a rental, if you have a rental
No,
property.
no, I'm talking about a business, like you
Yeah,
got.
this is residential. This section deals with residential only.
If it's a commercial and our nuisance guy goes out, this is not built into that, right?
That's correct.
They need to fix it.
That's right.
Rental property or just residential rental, single family?
Residential rental, let me phrase it, if it's owner occupied, so you have a duplex and you live in one half of it, that's an owner occupied residential property.
Okay, but you're saying commercial's not in the game?
Yeah, but I'm saying if you rent a duplex out to two tenants and you're not one of them, that is not an owner occupied property.
Okay, understand.
Comments? Here?
When you're done.
Anybody else?
No, thank you though.
Ben, anything else? You did a hell of a job, heck of a job putting this together. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. I actually have a favor to ask of Mr. Osborne. If you would give Chuck your email address, have him shoot you the video so that you can show your mom what a great job you've done for us. I think this is probably your inaugural appearance before council and public body. You've done a really terrific job, A. And B is I think we've often talked about having college interns, and I think you've done an outstanding job for us and demonstrated the worth of having an intelligent, thoughtful intern. So thank
Concur.
you.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you very much.
Make sure your mom sees this, okay? That you're just not making this up.
She's probably screaming it right now.
You can stream it on.
Might be screaming if she's not. Give Mr. Osborne the video.
I will say.
Thank you.
Charge.
Okay, so we addressed all sections.
Yep.
All right, next up, water sewer rubbish, Chairman.
Yeah, I talked about with this with Pat last week. I'm going to turn it over to Pat. It's about turning water off and some of the different changes and how we want to handle that when they want to turn it back on.
Yes. For my markup. There we go, got it, okay. So,
And just for,
I'm sorry.
council's packet, the very last few pages is the marked up version of this, and that's your
This was a collaboration with the Finance Department, Water Utility Department, in looking through this and trying to find out, bringing this up to current speed. Much of this was passed, in 2011 or even older, and there's some things that have changed. So in 93704, the water turn-on charge is the first area that is being changed. I'm sorry, 93703.
Yeah.
We,
B first, 937 and 3B.
Yes, so what we wanted in there is a provision that obviously not, if you don't pay your bill, we're going to turn off your water. That should go without saying, but there are other reasons that we would want to turn off your water. So if you were somehow altering our water system that was not in compliance with what we were presently operating under, that poses a potential obstacle or hazard to the city, and we would want to, hey, listen, if this is the way we know how it works, this is how the water gets here, we don't want any tampering with this and disconnecting things without our knowledge.
Example would be a backflow device that's not in place, or
Any technology that may come into play now or in the future. So currently we're installing or have been installing the remote reads devices. That would be one. Backflow would be another. There could be other technologies invented down the road that we didn't anticipate. That's part of the reason why we're changing this, is that back in 2011, we didn't anticipate the technology that was going to be available in 2019. And so we want to make sure that our ordinances reflect that this is our water system and that you can't tamper it and make it run contrary to what our standard is set up to do. So we would have the right to discontinue water service to that location. Thank you, Laura. 93704, we're up, looking at part of it is that we have a water turn-on charge is $50, it's too low. If your water's been turned off, it's usually for non-payment, and you'd be surprised at how many of these we do every month. And at $50, it's not turning out to be much of a deterrent. So we were looking at increasing that amount. And we're also looking at establishing business hours in which this process will happen. Presently, we'll practically come out 24/7. And as you know, if you pull somebody in after hours, you're paying somebody overtime. And there's going to be a minimum call out in hours. So, this starts to add up to the cost of our department. And we look at what other cities in the Stark County and their surrounding community are doing. They run it by basically when their hours of operation are for their utility department. In this case, it's located in City Hall, so it would be governed by business hours at City Hall, which would be 8 to 4:30. So we'll send somebody out to turn on your water between 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Now, you have to keep in mind that at the point that it reaches that their water got turned off, they hadn't paid their bill, it was 30 days late, then they're getting a notice that you didn't pay your bill, and now another 30 days goes by, and then you're going to get a shut-off notice that runs for about 14 or 15 days. And so the next thing you know, you're 75 days into this before you actually do anything. So it's not like this comes as a surprise to anybody.
Some cities, Pat, they actually make you meet the water person out there. And that's a little inconvenience to people too. And those little inconveniences are reasons why they pay their bill on time too. So that's another thing that we don't have it here, that other people, if they want to turn it back on, you have to meet the person and turn it on, because something could happen to the house if it's turned on, or if it's the water in the house, and then they would say, well, the city turned my water on, my faucets were all open, and then flood it over. So there's a thought process on that too. And that's an inconvenience, which no one wants to go through, so let's pay your bill.
One of the problems we run into as well is, like Patrick said, we've sent out 2 bills that you've been late on, and then you've gotten this nice red limit notice, where we tell you if you don't pay by, last month it was June 24th, then June 25th, we're coming to shut you off. What happens though is, the morning of June 25th, our repeat offenders come flying in here to pay. So then we've done all this work to generate all these notices and send somebody out and do all this, and then they're not even getting charged the turn-on fee because they know it and they're coming flying in here to pay. Or if it's after hours and the tech's going out to turn them off, they'll come running out with a check or come running out with their phone to show that they paid by credit card. And that's a lot to have to put on the tech to not only do his job of turning on and off water, but also to receive payment, which we'd rather than not be doing. We'd rather them come in during business hours and pay at the counter. as they should.
Laura, can they pay online?
They can.
So that would be an easy way to do it if you're down to the wire, just pay it through, I don't know how you do it, credit card or whatever.
Right, yeah, we have credit card online as well as e-check online that they can do.
Does it say that on the bill that they can pay? Do a lot of people pay online?
Absolutely. We do have quite a bit. And, people that do this over and over again, we encourage them to either pay online or to do auto pay, where it's auto drafted out on the 15th. But most of them, like I said, repeat offenders. They come in every 2 months and they're paying on the last possible day.
Pat, I just wanted to say that big break that happened on Wise, that the police officers found at 3 in the morning. I went out and looked at that, and I just think, it was really nice Canton City came to the rescue to help us with that project, so I had to throw that out there.
And so you're aware, it does appear that it's doubling the cost, but understand how long ago this was put in place, and that the technician, that if it's after hours and a call out, understand based on union seniority, it's often the most senior person, meaning the most highest paid, has the ability to put themselves at top of the chart. So following our collective bargaining agreement, we're sending the highest paid person possible out on overtime to turn off or turn on water.
Plus it's a 4-hour minimum, to try to call them in.
Sometimes it's
It
a 2 hour.
takes 2 hours to turn on somebody's water.
Yes, sir, even if it's just one.
Comments on that? Anybody?
Well, we got more.
We got a few more.
Keep
Well,
going.
wait,
Keep
more.
going.
So as we get into 93707B, this is an upgrading language that all new installations for service shall meet the specifications on file with the Director of Administration. Previously, the older version specified that it had to have a touchpad, it had to have a radio, or a telephone read dial. I mean, this is all antiquated technology. We shouldn't specify the technology because we won't know what it will be 10 years from now. So let's just keep the specifications on file. Your council does this with other ordinances where you're requiring the specifications to be kept in administration. All new tap-in, in letter C, all new tap-in installations shall be fees and meter, cost plus labor and equipment. We didn't include fees before, so we're letting some of these dollars just slip out the door that shouldn't have. We struck out the old section E, used to read remote meter dials are available from the city at the cost of material and labor. That's obsolete because we're providing the meter at our own cost at this time, so we struck that. Spelled it out even a little clearer in a new section E that all existing water users, either business or residential, connected to the North Canton water distribution system shall be maintained to the specifications on file with the Director of Administration.
Does that include rental properties as commercial or residential?
Business.
Okay.
Yeah, question. This involves anybody connected to our water system, correct? Not
Yes.
just city residents.
That's correct.
So any subdivision, any corporate businesses, and we know our extension, our water system serves a lot of communities. Okay.
In an old section, we had reference to what would happen in the event that you can't read a meter. We had this elaborate process of the steps that could go through because we had a man or an individual or a man or woman go out and read a meter. Well, what if they couldn't read the meter? What if something's wrong with it? What if it was obstructed by a tree or bush? And the list would go on and on, and the next, 3 months would go by and you didn't have the meter read, and we had all this language in there to do that. Now that's obsolete because changing to the AMI technology, the meter read is going to happen automatically. We're not sending somebody out, hence we don't need any reference to that. Installing a new section here, so this is item F. This one's important, so I'm going to read it slow, and we need to digest this. For all new, that's the first word that's important, new. For all new installations, a separate meter for measuring water consumption shall be installed for each dwelling or business unit before water shall be furnished thereto, except where 2 or more dwelling units or 2 or more business units located in one building under a common roof, having common ownership, and the common owner thereof applies for and contracts to pay for the total water consumed thereto. Otherwise, a separate water line which is connected to a separate shutoff valve and a separate meter shall be required for each dwelling unit or business unit. So, new construction. We have a new building, we have a city block being torn down because of the DRD that's coming into play. And so we have a new building being constructed, and it's going to have 4 tenants in it, and each one is a separate entity. What we want to avoid is where there is one meter, one shutoff that serves that building. Tenant A doesn't pay their water bill. I can't shut their water off unless I shut water off to the entire building. That creates a problem for us for tenants B, C, and D. So this would establish that there has to be, you either have to set it up that there's a separate meter, separate install, separate shut off for each unit in the building, or you just agree that you as the owner of the property are going to get one bill from us for everything, and then you work it out with your tenants as to what they're paying.
So that would save them money for the install, the 4 meters, the 4 shut-offs, the 4 separate 1-inch lines.
Yeah.
Which is a good idea, you just charge it back to the tenant.
And they could have sub-meters within the property to bill their tenants after the fact, but from the city, they'd only receive 1 bill. And this is especially important for duplexes or plazas. That's where we see it all the time. I wish that we could fix it in existing, but we're gonna start with new construction.
Yeah, good point.
Because you have, one side of the duplex doesn't pay, the only remedy you have is to shut off both sides.
Good.
Very difficult decision to make on a monthly basis.
Because they can always put the sub-meter on and just have 1 line running to the building. And that's still pretty affordable.
And then under 93709 deposits for businesses, we've increased the deposit to be an estimate of 90 days of usage. This is for all new businesses that are coming online into the system. So, you know, it's kind of similar in real estate where you rent something out, you want the first month and last month's deposit. This is kind of that way. We require a deposit up front for new businesses. We want it to be equal to about 90 days worth of coverage, because in the event that that business fails, quits paying their bill, fails after 12 months, by the time you heard, as we said, how many days it takes before you're in arrearage, then we give you so many days. We're at 75 days already, and we were actually then in a position where we only had 45 days worth of deposit.
So sometimes with, like rentals as an example, you can collect first month's rent, if you take a second deposit, you have to pay interest on it. So I don't know what the legally is here, but I'm sure the law director already knows that.
Okay. How do you know what the usage is if it's a new building though, if you want the first 90 days?
It's an estimated usage, so for instance, if we have a new restaurant going in, we'll look at other restaurants and take a guesstimate of it. And really, this is to protect the property owner, because many businesses are renting their space. And if we only have 45 days deposit and they go out of business, then that ultimately goes back on the property owner, so this protects them.
So with the AMI technology, sometimes, you know, if this goes undetected, then there's a huge bill someone has to pay. That's always a conflict. So if there's an issue with the AMI, they should connect it up quicker that we have a problem, right? And that can be addressed with the landlord or the owner or tenant or whatever the case may be. I'll take it.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. Mark, one question? Robert? Very good. Ready to move forward on this?
Yes.
With an emergency clause. Okay, I need a motion and a second to amend the agenda to add a finance committee to discuss appropriations and then and now purchase order needed due to the water main break. So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm going to let the board talk about this. We talked about it a little bit, but as you know, we had a water main break. The contractor did a nice job covering it, and the crews did an excellent job fixing it. But it does cost money. Just like when you have a house, something happens in a house and it breaks, you have to have a reserve fund, and we're really lucky that we have some of that. So, Laura.
Yes. Like Stephanie said, when things happen, they do cost money, and we do have some money set aside every year for small emergencies, but this was a pretty significant emergency. So what we need to do is to appropriate some additional dollars. I don't know the exact dollar figure yet, but it will be north of 50,000. Brian Hill's gathering up all those invoices from City of Canton, Wanger Excavating, the Pipe Fitting Company, and several others for supplies. So I'll have that for you next week. And then hand in hand with the appropriation, we'll need that then and now purchase order, because these are all going to be paid after the fact. And, you know, we had the money then, we'll have it now. That's what that means. So I'll have the exact number for you next week.
Laura, did Canton City volunteer their labor?
No,
We pay them per hour to help them.
we'll reimburse that.
That's what I want, I know they brought us material.
So all their time and material, we're certainly going to reimburse them for their work. Because really what we ran into is that we have 150 miles roughly of water line in the city. By comparison, the city of Canton has 650 miles of water line. And these large concrete lines that we have in the main trunk lines, Patrick, we've never had one ever break. They're good, solid lines. And so most of the lines that we have in the city are like the ductile iron. So when you have a break, you can just go in there and surgically remove the broken portion and then make a connector. But with these big concrete lines, you have to take out the whole 12-foot line and replace the whole line. And so when we got in there, what made this one unique is that because we've never had a 12-foot line break, it was like, okay, do we have the equipment to repair this? How do we repair it? How do we disconnect the concrete connection points? Because they would come together, and then there was like another concrete sleeve and a wrap around that would keep that together. Which made it worse was that the connection point, the one end connection point, was right underneath the Nimishon Creek, like 16 feet below the Nimishon Creek. And oddly enough, what was below that was a sanitary sewer line, which was like another 10 feet below that. So sometimes, even having a backhoe, our backhoe doesn't go 30 feet into the ground. So the city of Canton, they've had a lot more experience with concrete lines. I think specifically, they had called us when they had, at the Hall of Fame project, they had inadvertently, a contractor had drilled into some of their concrete lines by the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So they had called us to see if we had particular equipment, and so from that, that's how the communication between our water distribution department and their water distribution department, they work together on these projects. And so when Patrick had called me early that morning, and also we spoke with Brian Hill, it's just like, get what you need. So we called in Wenger, because they have the equipment, and also the city of Canton. And what was great is that, we had, the businesses were closed 9 businesses, and then we had Mercy Medical. You can't operate if you don't have water. You can't flush toilets, you can't wash hands. So they had to be closed down the first day, and then we're looking into the second day. But the city of Canton brought over 2 crews with, they ended up 4 guys each crew, plus 2 supervisors. And I mean, it was incredible. And everybody worked as a team. They worked as a team, and so we had Wenger Excavating, the city of Canton, our crew, and they got it done. We were thinking it was going to go into the 3rd day, but you got it done by what, 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
And I mean, it really does. It gives you goosebumps when you see, guys that know what they're doing, and they do this every day. I mean, good, hard-working people that get in there to get it done. And you turn on the water, I mean, what more can you ask for? You just don't realize sometimes what goes into making sure that we turn on the tap water or the shower or flushing the toilet. But it was a great thing. And with the city of Canton, they put in a lot of time and resources. They dropped all their other projects. Wenger Excavating dropped their project that they were working on us. Or at least they diverted some of the crews, right? Oh, they diverted their whole crew. And we got it done. So, and actually got it done considering, got it done ahead of schedule, because we had Summit County also brought us fittings. City of Canton brought us the 18-inch lines. They were 18 feet long. So, and then we had, where was it, a company out of Illinois that
supplied, we bought the collars from.
Yeah, brought us the collars that were needed. So there was items coming from 3 different locations, and they had a trucker that trucked them in, through the night.
And
to get it here, yeah.
One of the things that you'll see when we have the full amount of the appropriation for next week is that Brian's also asked me to put some additional monies in there to buy some of these pieces parts, so we have them on hand from now on. So he's looking to the future as well.
Smart.
Any thoughts on how this occurred, what reasoning that it doesn't occur again? Do we have anything that we would know of how this happened?
So, well, go ahead, you're the.
Yeah, I think it was more of a sort of a fluke thing, because that's the first thing that we thought. It was the bell joint was the spigot, and the bell joint kind of goes over the top, and the whole bell goes apart. And we thought, oh boy, every 18 feet we've got one of these, what's going to happen? But it appeared that because of the sanitary trench under it, and the Zimmer ditch right there, and the water levels, that the thing actually had settled, and had it with an 18-inch line, a tremendous force, and it just blew the bell apart. So we think it's an isolated incident.
You never seen one of those before?
Did you guys look at the hole?
Let's hope we don't. Yeah.
There was a 30-foot diameter hole, about 20 foot deep. I mean, it was a huge, right next to the creek, so, you know, when it bubbled up, it wasn't like you could find it easily, because it was falling into the
Yeah, it
creek.
looked like it had settled, and that just caused a tremendous force on that pipe itself, but just over time, it just popped.
Maybe it was the earthquake.
And you know, the thing is, yeah, when you have that much water like going through, they registered, because we have, as part of the storm sewer management, it raised the water level by a foot at the Zimmer ditch, 2 million gallons in 2 hours. So, you know, at 5:30 in the morning when those breaks, the water's just, you know, flowing, and so they had to get in, and our crews did a great job. And Brian Hill, what time did he come in at?
Brian Hill was in at 2:45 a.m. on that was Thursday morning, stayed until way into the night, Thursday, and back early Friday
Pretty
morning.
impressive.
Good workers.
This was a 47-year-old concrete pipe, it was from 1972, so age played a big factor.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, Chairman Ware, are we ready to roll? You okay to
Yeah.
move this forward? Any opposition? Put that on the agenda for next week. That concludes this agenda, so I'll motion.
Mr. President, before you conclude this agenda, I'd like to know if I'm going to be able to make remarks at the next meeting succeeding this, being that it's a special meeting. I think in the past you've said that I can't, so I'd like to.
Specific to the agenda, if you.
Yeah, these are just Director of Administration things that need to be shared with council, that I get an opportunity to speak at council meetings.
Let's do that right now.
Let's do that right now.
We need a motion.
No, that you've granted this in the past. I'm
Yeah.
just reminding you.
It's regular committee meeting.
Okay. So I'd like to just take just 2 minutes, or a couple minutes here, just to bring council up to speed on 2 things. First has to do with the Public Safety Service Center. And as you know, we completed the RFQ process. We narrowed the list of 4, interviewed the 4, selected 1, ranked them best to least, and Randstetter Carroll Group came out number 1 pretty significantly. So we then, the finance director and myself, entered into some talks with them per the process followed in Ohio Revised Code to discuss a scope of service. What is it that you would do if we were to engage you? What is it we want you to do? And then from that, they would determine what the cost for that scope of service would be. So what we came up with is that what we were looking for them to do is to come in, study our operations independently, verify the needs that the 2 chiefs had indicated that they have, compare that with what is happening in their expertise around the country with other fire, EMS, police buildings. After that, develop a preliminary building program through an owner meeting process. So this would involve other elected officials and members of the community. Then the next step would be to analyze 2 sites, provide a concept floor plan, site plan, and cost estimates, Then finally, planning and programming a final report, including the site plan, floor plan, building elevations, cost estimates, and project schedule. We believe this is the minimum amount required to take it to the next step. Voters asked for specifics that we didn't have at that time. And so all I'm looking to do is move forward with this. The cost is $30,000. I have that money, we have that money available and budgeted for this. And unless there's a majority that would object to it, I would just let you know that I'm moving forward with that. Okay, next, we received from the insurance service offices our new fire rating, and pleased to report that it's we have maintained it at a level 3. You know that it's ranked 1 to 10. 10 is the worst, 1 is the best. Plain Township is a 3 with some qualifications. Some areas of Plain aren't quite 3, so they have a split rating. Jackson Township is a 2. The lower the number, the better the fire service. The better the fire service, the lower your property insurance premiums are. So it's very important that we maintain this level because it is a significant jump in cost to residents and to commercial operations. If their ISO rating changes even one number, it can be 10%, just going from a 3 to a 4. And it gets worse as you go. So I wanted to let you know that the chief did a lot of work to make that happen. And then finally, I just wanted to just summarize, not all what we have done in the first 6 months of the year. I just wanted to tell you where I see the mayor directing me to go in the next 6 months. And so I just want to hit those things so that you understand that when you come back from break, you're ready to roll. So we've got to talk about and institute an update to our master plan. It was last done in 2012. We've got the rental registration proposal to come forward. We've been meeting with the Stark County Realtors Association, and we believe we're close to an agreement. But with everything that's going on, I could not get this done before we broke. So I apologize to residents and to the council and the mayor for not being able to get that quite ready by July 8th. The downtown redevelopment district, we believe we're close on language there. We're ready to move forward. The zoning code analysis, a meeting with our consultant on July 15th. I'd like to hear your opinions on what is not right with the zoning code. That goes to anybody in the community that would like to weigh in on that. I'd appreciate it. The building department rate studies that Member Soretta referred to need to be completed by the time we return. The park expansion plan, we will have chosen architects for Bitzer and Dogwood to get that project started in the fall. We have to finish the long-term agreement for management of Arrowhead. We have the council engineering move to complete. We have a commercial building maintenance code to get in play, the entertainment district. We have contract negotiations for the service department union. We've got 2020 budget to work on, and then we're working on a number of additional economic development opportunities. Thank you for allowing me.
I got one question for you. Hoover District mitigation, do we have any updates on what Hoover's doing over there?
There is air quality samples being taken. They have been taken for the last couple of weeks. That information is being compiled by the consultant that IRG has engaged, and that information is being forwarded to US EPA. Once they have read those and believe that the air quality has been stabilized for a period of time, we're being advised that somewhere around 30 to 60 days, they would be permitted to move forward with the interior build-out of the facility. So our folks over here in the permits department have been over there with them in this process and watching the air samples being taken and the equipment that was installed, and everything's working great. So I think that's a very good sign.
How exciting.
Patrick?
Yes.
ETA on the opening of the post office.
So This has been one of those situations where, you know, government gone awry. This is the federal government. The lease has been signed, the post office is ready to move in. In fact, the federal government has been paying the lease. But the federal government has not been able to get AT&T in to install the telephone and internet connections that they need. I've been in talks with the owner of the property. They have offered to help move forward, but it's really in the hands of Washington, D.C. to get this resolved. It's the only thing that's holding it up. But the owner of the property and the city are all, you know, most anxious. We've called, you know, we had the best success with Senator Brown's office in getting us information and being able to track it down. And we're continuing to follow up with them. That seems to be the hold up. AT&T. They do have litigation with the U.S. government and the Supreme Court. That may or may not have anything to do with it. I don't know.
Mayor, did you have something?
Yes, one other announcement too. Great news, Walsh University selected their 7th president, Dr. Timothy Collins, who is an Air Force Academy graduate, is a flight instructor. He came from Johns Hopkins University, Chief of Government Relations. I mean, this gentleman has a very impressive resume. He's also a Bronze Star recipient in the United States Air Force, so this is exciting. Very good news for our largest employer. So I'm sure we'll all be able to meet him sometime soon.
Awesome. Okay. Anyone want to give me a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. And then I will call to order special council meeting Monday, July 1st, 8:28 p.m. Laura, will you please call the roll for us?
Peters.
Yeah, here.
Foltz.
Here.
Sreda.
Here.
Revolt.
Here.
Kiesling.
Here.
Waring.
Here.
Fonte.
Here.
Sundquist.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, at this time, if you wish to address council, please step forward, state your name and address. Reminder, we have a 5-minute time limit, and comments are specific to the items on the agenda. Thank you.
Rick Osborne, 307 Frederick Street, Southeast North Canton, Ohio. I would like to address ordinance 49, 2019. We have no budget numbers on the general, on all these items, general fund, where it's coming from, fire fund, EMS fund, street fund. Secondly, and I addressed this with Mr. Revolt last week, but didn't get an answer. Are we moving levy funds into this capital reserve fund? I wouldn't think it'd be legal. You've persuaded the public to appropriate levies for street purposes, for EMS purposes, and for fire purposes. Are we playing a switcheroo here and we're just going to grab that money and run with it? So we need to know where the specific fund, which is required by law to have on there, you need to know where exactly which fund you're transferring these monies from. And each of those funds, fire, EMS, street, there are probably a dozen budget numbers, account numbers. Which specific account are we taking this money from? And then, where's all this money being used for? So I think, rather than just blindly rubber stamping this, we need an explanation. You need to know where specifically this money is coming from. Why is it being transferred? And actually, this is a supplemental appropriation. You're supplementing, I guess, deficient accounts. So it's not even addressed properly. It should be a supplemental appropriation and identifying the specific accounts. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none, we move on to old business. A motion and a second to read by title only, second reading, ordinance 48-19.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance amending section 24 of authorized manpower of ordinance number 10-89, police personnel ordinance as amended to allow for additional personnel as needed to fill positions receiving funding from outside sources.
Thank you. This is the second reading. We had Chief Minnock here, I believe, 3 weeks ago. We discussed this. Anyone have anything to add further, questions? Entertain a motion and a second to adopt the second reading. Motion to adopt. Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The motion is second to read by title only, second reading, ordinance 49-19.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the transfer of funds from the general fund, the fire fund, the EMS fund, and from the street fund to the capital reserve fund in the total amount of $335,997.50 for current expenses during fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019.
Thank you, Chairman.
Laura, do you want to say, comment on this?
Sure, I will address some of Mr. Osborne's comments.
That's
First
fine.
of all, this is a transfer ordinance, so we're transferring money from those four funds over to our capital reserve fund, which was established by ordinance 2 years ago. Once that money's in the capital reserve fund, it's placed within departments in that fund related to fire, street, etc. In fact, I don't have it here, but in the committee meeting when we first introduced this, there was a breakdown of exactly what pieces, parts of general fund, was it administration, was it finance, etc. Once that money is transferred to the 335 Capital Reserve Fund in the name of those departments, it is not appropriated. Council would still have to appropriate those dollars. Typically, we would do that next year as part of the 2020 budget. Those dollars are sitting there, and then council would choose to appropriate that. And just as we do with all our other funds, we would have those little explanations down at the bottom for, this is for, this year we used some of the street money for a piece of equipment, for instance. I don't believe any other departments used any of the funds this year. If a department had, let's say, an emergency or an unforeseen need sometime this year, they could spend that money, but they would, of course, have to come back to council and get that appropriated. Because currently, the only thing appropriated in that 335 fund is those things that were done last year as part of the 2019 budget.
Wasn't that the carryover?
Yeah, the amounts that you see here in the ordinance are the carryover. So those things in general, street, EMS, and fire that the department heads asked for last year didn't get spent by the end of the year, and so then we carried it over. And, in regards to them being levy funds or restricted monies, again, when we put it in 335, we don't lose sight of where that money came from. Street money is still street money, and it's still going to sit in the street department and only be appropriated for street uses. That's something that when you guys created this fund, I was very, adamant about, that things can't get commingled. Number one, it's a budgetary law problem, but number two, it's just a fairness issue, that if one department head saves money, he or she shouldn't lose it to another.
So it isn't the use it or lose it theory. We were doing it so that we'd be more cognizant of the cash. Anything extra they carry over so they can use it for smart spending instead of foolish, like spend it or lose it type spending.
And reserve funds are authorized under budgetary law.
I think it's a wise use. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so with no other questions, I move to adopt.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the special council meeting. Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Did you boys need something signed?